Alright guys, welcome back to another Pokemon Champions video. And today I wanted to start by sharing the team that I actually use in order to hit Master Ball tier here. So definitely check out the team ID above if you want to try this out for yourself. So I'm going to go into the explanation of the team, but again, here are the stats just in a big picture if this is just something that you want to look at really quick. And then these are the moves. But really quickly here, let's go actually into each of these Mons one by one and talk about why I use each of them and even some of the changes that you may have seen from the first video if you were able to watch that one first. So definitely check that one out if you haven't, so you can continue to see the progression of how we get better. Alright, so first and foremost, one of the main changes that I made to Garchomp, one, I used to just run Scarf and have Dragon Claw here, but now I'm actually running Scale Shot in order to increase my speed even further, and we're using Mega Garchomp just because this guy does really good into sand teams, especially with his ability Sand Force, and that just allows me to do massive damage to a lot of things like that. Not only did this add some variety to the gameplay, but I also felt like there were many matchups sometimes where Charizard really was just not the best thing to bring into it just because of all the counters, but you felt like you almost felt like you had to because Charizard was the only Mega on the team before that. So having a Mega Garchomp definitely helped to alleviate that for sure. Charizard is the same set as last time, just making sure I have the Dragon Pulse over the Weather Ball, that way there aren't certain dragons or things like that that can actually try to wall me out. And it's nice to have a single target move against Wide Guard and things like that. Whimsicott I still think is the MVP support Pokemon of the team, not only having Tailwind, which really allows me to outspeed the majority of the cast who isn't also using Tailwind or having some massive speed boosting options here, but the amount of Pokemon I caught into Fake Out or Protect or really just a move that was not useful, which allowed me to then double into the Pokemon that was more of a threat, was pretty frequent. So definitely like this set here. Rotom I kept the same as before, just running some bulk, a little bit of a speed investment and as much HP as possible just to be that bulky support mon, burn the offensive attackers, hit things that are weak to electric like Pelipper, Corviknight, things like that, and have some niche cases for Hydro Pump as well, but definitely thought that he was a good fit to the team. Sneasler, again, hits fast, hits hard, and gets even faster once he uses close combat due to that White Herb that we're using there. So definitely thought that this guy also has some niche cases. I wouldn't say I brought him every game, but with the games that I brought him, I definitely felt like he was doing well against the competition. Lastly, we have Incineroar here, who I actually used to run Parting Shot on, but I opted out that for Taunt just to stop Setup Mon and to stop Trick Room. Because I have this little bit of speed here, and most Trick Room users want to be as slow as possible, this actually will allow me to taunt the Trick Room user first before it even goes and stop Trick Room from going up most of the time. There was the occasional Farigiraf that had the Mental Herb, but most of them are running Colbur Berry, which is the berry that actually stops them from taking damage from Dark Tech moves. So I thought that this was a great switch up for sure. The reason that I did that, I was thinking about running Trick Room on Whimsicott specifically just to counter other Trick Room users, but because I wasn't running up against it all the time, I didn't necessarily think that that was worth getting rid of one of these other move spots here. I'm reading Moonblast, that's why it messed me up, but one of these move slots here. So definitely that's the team, but again, if you want to check it out for yourself, go to the beginning of the video and go from there, but I'll show you a couple of games that I had and how I started to make the most of the team. Take care. So I decided to go Charizard and Sneasler lead on this just because this team that I'm going up against really does not have many good counters for Charizard, and Sneasler also hits several of these things on the team for super effective damage and also can get off of a fast Fake Out. I brought Whimsicott in the back just for the speed control and for the disruption. And then Garchomp I'm going to bring, although I don't expect to Mega Evolve it, just because of the speed and the super effective potential here. So my opponent leads off Alola Ninetales and Hisuian Samurott, and I lead off my Charizard and Sneasler as mentioned. I think this puts me in a good leading position just because the Snow Warning comes up right away, and I can just Mega Evolve and bring up the Sun and get rid of that Ice right away. I'm thinking to double into the Samurott just because sometimes I'm going to run into these things and they're scarfed, and I'm going to do that by hitting it with a Solar Beam but faking it out with Sneasler first. I feel like Ninetales this turn is not really that much of a threat for doing damage. I'm able to get the Mega Evolution off as stated. The Sun is going to come out. Sneasler's Fake Out goes off without any issue, so Samurott is unable to move there. Ninetales is then going to go for a Moonblast into the Sneasler, and this is going to do almost half, so definitely have to pay attention and respect that for next turn. Charizard gets off the Solar Beam in one turn, and down goes the Samurott. So now it's 4-3 with me being up. So my opponent decides to bring in a Sabelye next onto the field. And honestly, I'm thinking that this thing is going to go from some sort of weather disruption just to make my sun go away. But I think Heat Wave still hits both of them for good damage, so I decided to go for it anyway, even if they do get a Rain Dance up. And then after I consider my switch-ins, I think that Whimsicott is really good here, just because that's going to allow me to not only get some speed control, but I can also hit the Sabelye for a super effective Moonblast if I need to. I think it totally surprised when Sabelye is actually a Mega Sabelye, which is the first one that I've seen on ladder, and it's in Master Ball tier. Funny. Ninetales goes for Protect, just to avoid any damage there from the Heat Wave. It doesn't really matter. You're going to get another one of those next turn, potentially. And this still does big damage, considering the bulk of Mega Sabelye. And I'm really caught off guard by the Metal Burst there. I've never seen that combination at all. But unfortunately for you, you're going to go down to another one next turn, so it doesn't really matter if you click on that again. So I decided to return to Cinder, again with the Heat Wave. And then I actually want to Encore the Ninetales, just to make sure that it actually gets stuck using Protect and stays useless on the field. My opponent decides to withdraw the Mega Sabelye, knowing that it's not going to be able to take another hit, and bring in the Sylveon, who does not resist Heat Wave in any way, shape, or form. Encore goes off, so now Ninetales is going to be stuck running Protect, so let's see, does it get lucky? It doesn't. So you're about to eat this Heat Wave to the face. Enjoy. Ninetales goes down to 1%, and it was actually sashed, which again, don't see a lot of those, but I mean, whatever floats your boat, man. And the opponent really just sees the writing on the wall and that they don't have a way to defeat me after this and decides to forfeit. So we're going to move on to the next game and see what the next team is. So we're going up against a kind of a mixed sand team here with Mega Delphox, I guess, as a secondary Mega. I'm definitely thinking on this game to start with Incineroar just to disincentivize all the physical attackers that are on this team, and also lead with Rotom just because it resists the ground with the Levitate. And it can also throw off some Will-O-Wisp, as well as hit Delphox for a Hydro Pump if it does decide to come into the game. I then decided to bring Garchomp for a third, just because it does way better into Sand than Charizard does. It actually gets its ability activated for the Sand Force. And then finally I'm going to bring Whimsicott, again just for speed control and just for a couple of super effective hits here and there. So let's see what my opponent does. And he decides to lead off with his own Whimsicott and Sneasler, and out comes my Rotom, Wash, and Incineroar. I get up the Intimidate, but that immediately activates his White Herb, which in some ways cancels it for later, but right now it makes him the fastest thing on the field. I'm not trying to eat a close combat right now, so I'm going to ultimately choose to switch Incineroar out into my own Whimsicott, just because I highly doubt that you're going to target that slot with a poison attack right now. Also with Rotom, what I'm thinking to do is to Will-O-Wisp the Sneasler. That way it'll just make it a lot less difficult to deal with later on in the game. So my Whimsicott comes in without any issues there. His Whimsicott is then going to Protect, which I wasn't targeting you anyway, so that's great. The Sneasler also goes for a Protect, so now I'm wondering if my opponent just wants to see what I was going to do to try and catch me into an Encore the next turn. So my Will-O-Wisp is obviously going to fail here, but I want to use my Whimsicott to catch one of these things into an Encore, which I ultimately decide to do the Sneasler, again just because that's the main damage dealer right now. And I still really do want to get a burn off, but I ultimately end up saying let's do some damage, and I go for the Thunderbolt here. So Encore goes off, Sneasler gets stuck into Protect, so you're not really going to do me any damage this turn, but he does get it off, so I'm not able to chip him, which is a little annoying. And then their Whimsicott actually goes for the Energy Ball, which again is the first time I've seen this on ladder with the Whimsicott. So definitely have to keep that in mind so that my Rotom doesn't get washed out here. Because I do think that this is going to be the key to my victory later on in this game. So I'm going to get some leftovers recovery here. I'm now going to Encore the Whimsicott, or at least attempt to get it stuck into the Grass move, while I bring in the Incineroar, knowing that he's snafed from Sneasler right now. I'm going to get that free Attract drop. But my opponent decides to take the Sneasler out of there and bring in the T-Tar and get up the Sand, which not super afraid just based on my positioning here, because at least I'm going to get off the Intimidate, and I know that it's probably not going to take me on one hit here. So They decided to go for Tailwind with the Whimsicott to get some speed control, but that also doesn't bother me too much just because now you're stuck in Tailwind and I can go for one next turn, and when it runs out, I'll still have an extra turn that you won't have. Once everybody gets finished getting smacked in the face with the Sandstorm, because we didn't have our Go Goggles like in Gen 3, I'm going to ultimately tell my Whimsicott to get some damage on this Tyranitar and go for Moonblast, while at the same time just faking out the Tyranitar. That way it protects me from damage, and the Whimsicott is stuck going for a Tailwind. They decided to wise up and not leave their Pokemon in to be a sitting duck, and actually bring out the Basculegion right away. But my fake out goes off, so Tyranitar doesn't move, and then it's going to get chipped a little bit more, even though it does have the extra special defense from the sand here. And it's now barely above 50%, which I think is a good turn for me overall. To me, that shows that the Basculegion is Scarf just because it's the fastest thing on the field. But then I remember that there was Tailwind, so maybe not. But either way, I think it's just to protect the Whimsicott. Again, to try and fish for another Encore later. And as I start to deliberate between bringing in Rotom or Garchomp, I actually think that Rotom here is going to be the safer switch in. So, that being said, Incineroar, you're coming back out now. Rotom, you're coming back in. Please don't die. Whimsicott goes for the Protect, and then I actually get surprised with this move coming up here, which is the Phantom Force. That's the first time I've seen that on Basculegion in ladder. So now I have to sit here and guess, who is he going to target? I'm thinking just because I had the Incineroar out that you're more likely going to target the Whimsicott because you weren't really predicting that switch. Thankfully, I'm able to survive the Rock Slide there, and I didn't get crit, and Rotom, being the tank that it is and eating up all those leftovers, is able to stay alive for one more turn here. So, next up, I'm going to actually try to increase my own speed with the Tailwind, just to make sure that I'm able to keep up with him, and again, outspeed when theirs is ended. And then ultimately, I'm making the prediction here, again, that Whimsicott's going to get hit. So, I'm going to go with Thunderbolt on Rotom into the Basculegion spot, knowing that Basculegion is still going to move first and come up and be available to be hit by the Thunderbolt. So my fingers are definitely crossed a little bit here, but just based on how my opponent is playing so far, this definitely seems to be the best strategy. My Tailwind goes off without any issue. Now I'm making my Rotom faster than the T-Tar at least. Whimsicott was the target of the Phantom Force, thank God. So you did your job. Definitely come on back, get some rest. For now, Rotom is able to go for the Thunderbolt right into that Basculegion and take it down to 1%, but thankfully, because of your teammate's sand there, you're still going to go down. T-Tar goes for the Rock Slide, and Rotom goes down as well, but both these Pokemon did their job, and I think this leaves me in a very good position here to be off on the next turn. With 3 of the 4 Pokemon fainting, and now he's out of Tailwind, but guess what? I have Tailwind. In comes Incineroar and Garchomp. My opponent decides to bring back out the Whimsicott, which again could still be a little bit disruptive, but I'm pretty confident I know how to play around this set now, just because I actually use my own as well. The Intimidate definitely puts me in a good spot to weaken the Tyranitar even more. And in this position, I think Iron Head is going to be the best move to go. Is just figuring out which Pokemon that I want to use it on. And I don't really care if I get Encored into the Iron Head, so ultimately I'm going to decide to use this on the Tyranitar here. And just because I don't want Whimsicott to be annoying, I'm going to use my Incineroar's Fake Out on that, knowing good and well that this Tyranitar is most likely going to go down to the hit anyway, so might as well just stop everything from moving to give myself the best chances of keeping the momentum up in this game. Garchomp then goes for the Mega Evolution. Looks sweet. I really can't wait for Garchomp Z if it ever does come into the game. Definitely going to be using that out. They decide to protect with the Whimsicott there, which, fair enough. You know, want to see what I'm going to go for. And again, they run the same double protect play just to really see what I'm going to do here. But ultimately, outside of Incineroar taking a little bit of Sandstorm damage, doesn't really matter to me too much. And I think I do need to improve at actually checking how many turns of things are left, because the Sandstorm ends, and I didn't even realize that that was going to happen. But hey, my Incineroar saved some HP, which is great. Ultimately though, Garchomp is gonna do the same thing, going for that Iron Head on the T-Tar because you are the threat. And at this point, might as well just take out the Whimsicott with the Flare Blitz and go from there. So my opponent is actually going to decide to take out the Tyranitar, maybe to just bring up the sand at the end of here. But you're going to take this Iron Head and go down to less than 50% HP there. I'm going to take a Moonblast to my Garchomp, which is going to do some pretty big damage here for sure. So now I really am trying to think of how I can bring the best end game here possible. I go for the Flare Blitz, which takes out this little prankster here. And ultimately, with there just being T-Tar and Sneasler left, and me having the Tailwind, even though Incineroar is my teammate on the field and he's pretty healthy, I really start to decide that I think Earthquake is going to be my end game here. So ultimately, that's what I'm going to decide to do. I'm just making sure I still have some Tailwind up, which I do. I ultimately click on that Earthquake and just have to say, Incineroar, thank you for your service, but it is no longer needed. And on the off chance that I somehow survive or that Incineroar does get a chance to move, I'm just going to do the most damaging thing possible to the Sneasler just to make sure that thing really goes down here. Tyranitar actually gets off a Quick Claw, which is terrifying because I've lost so many matches to Quick Claw, but then I dodged the Rock Slide with my Incineroar at least. Garchomp takes a hit. My fingers are crossed now. Am I going to be flinched? I'm not. And the Earthquake goes off and I actually win the game. So this one was super close. Garchomp was the only survivor, but if I did not dodge the flinch from that Rock Slide, I absolutely would have lost that game. So good game here for sure. So let's do one more match and see how it goes. Alright, this match, not to spoil it too much, you're definitely going to see why Whimsicott is the real MVP here, but just to get into the team comp, I decided to lead off with Charizard and Sneasler in the front just because of them having a Politoed and potentially bringing up weather that is not advantageous to me. So definitely want to bring him in the front so I can compete with the Weather War there. I then choose Sneasler as my second just because, again, fake out, I'm able to hit several team members for some pretty big damage here with Sneasler. So I think that this is a good thing to lead off with because most of the Pokemon on his team really do not want to see Sneasler at all. Already mentioned Whimsicott, so that's going to be my third just for all of the disruption and the speed control like always. And then finally, anytime I see Rain, I'm clicking Rotom just because the electric type moves, the water resist. Rotom does really good in Rain. So let's see what my opponent does. Alright, so they lead off with Tinkaton and Kleavor, and I'm leading with my Charizard and then Sneasler, and I still feel like I'm in a pretty good position here. Whether he has the rain up or not, Heat Wave is going to do a lot of damage, and I'm not predicting the Politoed to come in quite just yet. I'm actually going to do a fake out on the Kleavor just because you're really the rock threat here. And as the Mega Evolution goes off, Sun comes out. Fake out is successful. So Kleavor's not going to move this turn. And I actually get faked out on my Charizard, which I wasn't expecting. I haven't gone up against too many Tinkatons, so I think this is just more of an experience thing. Next up, I'm going to decide to actually protect on my Charizard because I really just don't want a Stone Axe coming my way and hurting Charizard to the point of potentially even fainting. I'm going to do as much damage as I can on the Kleavor just because in this position right now is definitely more of the threat here. My opponent then makes the read and catches me off guard. Thankfully it does a little bit less than half, so if I have to take another one of those, I can. And one threat is down, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'm assuming that the Tinkaton's going to target my Sneasler here. Yep. Thanks for your service. And he got a crit just to rub it in my face. And now that his Kleavor is down, I'm expecting him to bring the Politoed to get rid of my son. So I'm going to bring out Rotom just to threaten the Politoed as soon as possible, which ends up being the correct play here. Now that the rain is up, I'm still not seeing Politoed as the biggest threat. I definitely do originally think to just go for a Dragon Pulse and then Hydro Pump, but just to make sure I'm getting some kind of damage on both of them, I'm still going to go for a Heat Wave here, just to get some chip, even if it doesn't do that much in the rain. And then I'm also going to Hydro Pump a Tinkaton, just because I feel like you're the one who's going to be doing the bigger damage here. But looks like he reads that he's a target and actually decides to send in the Dragonite. So Multi-Scale is broken. And this will put me in a good position next turn to hit it with the Dragon Pulse and stop it before it gets started here. I get the accuracy drop. So I'm going to definitely cross my fingers because the amount of 95% accurate moves that I've missed in this game is criminal. But yeah, Dragonite, you have to go. Alright, so their Dragonite decides to Mega Ball, which is really not a big surprise here. And let's see if you're actually able to do anything in this game or not. Oof. Rotom takes some pretty big damage there, but thankfully you're a tank. Zard fires back with his own Dragon Pulse, which I've surprised a lot of people with dragons in. I guess they expect the Weather Ball. So you go down, and because you went down, now I'm able to actually do some big damage onto the Politoed. Great positioning here. Probably gets the Citrus, but either way, next turn you're definitely going to go down if I need you to. Charizard, thank you for your service, sir. And my last teammate in is Whimsicott, so let's come on and bring him into the endgame. His last teammate is Tinkaton, so it's really just these next 2 or 3 turns are really going to decide the game here. I'm just going to double protect just to try and catch something into an Encore, and we'll see what happens. Alright, so Tink uses Gigaton Hammer. You use Weather Ball. Really just fishing for damage there, but definitely needed a little bit of recovery on the Rotom just to stay as healthy as possible. And now I really want to get this to a 2v1 as quickly as possible, so I think it's definitely time to double into the Politoed here. I'm able to move first. Tinkaton does a play rough, but thankfully I survived due to that last leftovers recovery. Or I may have survived on like 1 or 2 HP, but the more HP the better. Politoed's gonna go down here. And now, in true JJK fashion, for those of you who watch that show, it's time to finish this up by jumping the opponent. And the best way I can think to do that, at least first and foremost, is to just go for a double protect. That way my Rotom can get a little bit of recovery, and we can fish to see if there's something good that I can Encore this Tinkaton into. So, shields go up. Tinkaton goes for the play rough, which is really not ideal. I think the best case scenario would be to trap this thing into a Gigaton Hammer. That way I can even PP stall it. So what I'm going to do is to Tailwind to make sure my Rotom moves before the Tinkaton, and then go for the Burn just to make sure it does as little damage as possible. So fingers crossed that I don't miss this Will-O-Wisp. Praise the Lord, I don't. Now let's see how much damage. Yep, it goes for the Gigaton Hammer. Whimsicott's even able to survive that, so this means that we're in a great position here, and we're definitely going to be able to 2v1. I don't have any super effective moves, so it's probably going to be a few turns of just chipping this thing down, but definitely going to catch you in the Encore into that, because that move is not really going to do much of any damage to Rotom at all. And I know I could have went for a Hydro Pump to just accelerate this, but I really didn't want to risk a miss, so we're gonna keep the strategy up for now and see what happens. Alright, first round of chip. Gigaton Hammer does literally less than 10 damage. Yeah, you're cooked, buddy. And now it's just rinse and repeat. And it's really just trying to figure out what gets him first. Is it going to be the burn and the chip damage, or are you just going to struggle yourself to death? So let's see what happens here. I get the Moonblast for some chip, and then the T-Bolt. Let's see how much you do. Okay, you live on 1 HP, so and you're burnt, and then you go for struggle. So no matter what, you were going down this turn. Good game for sure, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the videos. If you want more Champions and Legends ZA content for now, make sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.